Hello Internet! Today we're going to be looking at how to draw lines in Unity, not using a line render or using gizmos. We're actually going to be looking at how to do it using GL calls, so graphics calls. And so both DirectX and OpenGL support multiple ways of drawing something. We've done this in the past where we did point rendering. So we would draw a point cloud and then that would render each vertex in our mesh individually without connecting them. In this video, we're actually going to be kind of taking a little bit of that, but moving it a little bit, so we're actually going to be using lines instead. So say you need to connect a graph or something, you're going to be able to render these lines. And so that's sort of what we're going to be getting into, and hopefully it will allow us to build more complex gizmos, but also just more complex games as well, because we can actually render these as if they're gizmos in our actual game. And so I hope this works. I have not tested it, so we're gonna find out. But what I have is I have a line material that's an unlit material, and so by default this is red. We may want to change that. Yeah, let's go to white. So the reason I'm thinking white is because I want to actually blend between the points. So each point, since we're using this, it should hopefully still have the vertex color and should blend between them. So it should be interpolated between them. So we should actually get sort of a gradient between those two along our line. And then I have this flow line script, which I am actually going to drop on this sphere here. So now we have a sphere that's going to serve as sort of the center point for this flow lines. And so there's nothing here. This is empty. What we're going to do is do a void on, let's say, render lines, and we are going to give it a set of vector 3s. So we'll just do this as our param. Ooh, that's not how you do that. Params of our vector 3, like so, and we'll call this. What do we want to call this? Our points. Sure. We're not going to be able to use params because eventually when we want to add color, you can only have params as the final argument because you can continue it as much as you want. If we had a color, we'd need equal numbers, so we'd either have to add an additional type or something else. This way we don't have to do that. So we have this render lines. It's going to do a GL. So this is actually going to start a pass for our graphics library. And we're going to start it with a GL.Lines. Now there's lines and there's a line strip. Let's start with lines because this is the one that I think we want. Line strip is going to be connected. If I'm remembering this correct, we can experiment a little bit. But a line strip is going to be a point connected to another point connected to another point. And so you're going to get sort of a long string, whereas this lines is going to take 2 points, connect them, and then take 2 more points and connect those without having a continuous string. So you can actually have disconnected stuff if you just do lines. So here is that. We have that. Next, we need to actually begin the pass for the material we're using, which means we need to actually pass in a material to this. So I'm going to grab that material, and that's just going to be the material that we created. That's going to be our line material. And so we can take that and do set pass, I believe is what it's called. And we'll set it as 0. So this is going to say use the first pass, or use the only pass in this shader to render this part. And so this way we're actually going to take that unlit shader and actually use it to render what we're doing here. Then we just need to do the other bits. So there's going to be a color. We're going to set the color. I am unfamiliar with how this actually works, but we are going to find out. Pretty sure we should just be able to grab the color off of our material. They might be white. And then we are going to grab vector 3s. That's what we want. Whoa. let's actually type this correctly. Right? No? Hold on. I saw it there. Vertex 3. Okay, so vertex 3 is going to take 3 points. Let's just do this from, say, 0, 0, 0. So just the center of our screen to vertex 1, 1, 1. Sure, so it'll be sort of a diagonal line along each axis. And then we can stop, end. Yeah, so when we end it, that actually causes it to get drawn. So what we're doing up to this point is sending commands to our graphics card. We're saying, hey, these are going to be things that we want you to do. And then at the end, it gets all of those and renders the thing. And so now, we're not actually using the points here, but that should be fine for now. So what I want to do is let's do these void on draw gizmos. I think this should work in our gizmos. So gizmos are drawn in the editor. They're not drawn in game. So if you want to add a custom gizmo, this might be a way to do it. And so what you do is do sort of render lines, and we'll just create a new empty array, like so. And so this is just an empty vector array. And now that we have that, we should be able to save this and go here, and we should see a white line, hopefully. Kind of do not that. What is... Huh. Oh. Hey, we should add a material here. Yeah, I bet that would work, wouldn't it? Cool. So now we get this nice white line, which, yay, it's working. What I want to do, though, is let's go back here, and I'm curious, can I do, say, a color.red to a color.green? And so what this should do is set each point. It should set a point to be the color red and then the color green. I'm hoping. I don't actually know if it does. Yeah, set the current vertex color. So let's do this. You know what? Let's not get that order out of confused. Let's actually try it this way. I don't think this will work. I think we do need it actually split up, but we'll see. So this should either be all red or fade from red to green. Or neither. Neither's an option. We can do neither. Null reference exception. Oh, that's from earlier. Whoops. Okay. We may have to do a pass on the colors. But that's weird. Why? One sec. Let's try something that we know has support for this. So if I do a soft additive particle, or just an additive particle, it actually is rendered with the particle. You can see it get added, so it kind of blends into our sphere as it goes in, but it stays green, which means we need to go and actually change this. So what happens is we set it to be red, and then we set it to be green immediately afterwards. So we're setting the same vertex to be both colors. I think I may want to actually move these down even further. So we'll set the vertex, and then we will set the color of that vertex, because order of operations is going to matter in this case. But we can kind of play with that and figure out what actually works. And yeah, turns out this works. So what we end up getting is sort of, you get green up here, and as we go in, if I can do that, you can see it grows red. These are going to be super thin, I'm realizing, but yeah, so we're getting sort of this fading line between the two, which is exactly what we want. But now what I want to do is actually make this configurable so that I can just give this, effectively create a line renderer that will connect given a set of, say, public vector3 points and a public set of colors. I want to connect each of these. And so instead of sending in this empty list, we're going to send in our points and our colors, like so. And so this obviously isn't going to work. We don't have a method that works like that. So let's add our color here. So we have our colors, and then we have a choice to make. Do we want it to treat the current position, our parent object, if you will, as the center point, so have everything kind of connect back to that? Or do we want to pass in pairs of points and have each of those connect? We can do either. I'm going to pretend like they're all source, or they're all their origin is always from the center or from the parent object. And so what this is actually going to be is slightly easier. So for each, can I do that? I can't do that, can I? For int I equals 0, well, I is less than the point's length. We're going to increment I. And so this is just a basic incrementation over our points. So we're going to walk over our points, and assuming the points and colors have the same length, we're going to need to add a check for that. If they do, we are going to go from our base color. I think we'll call it that. So we can do public color base color. And so that will be sort of the origin color that we're starting at. And then we can source that and say, send this somewhere else. So given this base color and our transform position, so our current position, oh, it doesn't like that. We need to actually get the X, Y, and Z out of this. Or can I? Nope. Okay. Wait. Yes. Okay. So for vertex, we can either pass in a vector 3 like this, or if we do a vertex 3, we need to pass in X, Y, and Z individually. So if I drop this 3 off, this is going to get really angry at me, but then I can also point it at the points.I and actually get the ith point, which is actually going to connect these two. And then we just need to, instead of using green as our other color, we're going to go from our base color to whatever that vertex's color is. So the ith color. And then, so that everything's sort of consistent and we have checking in one step, I'm going to say if we can't validate input, not that. If I pass in the points and the colors to this validate input, and if that doesn't return true, we're going to return and just ignore this. So effectively, if you pass something invalid in here, say you're in the inspector and you start adding points, but you don't add any colors yet, it's not going to draw them yet. It's going to sort of skip those and pretend like it can't do anything. So this validation is actually going to, well, let's, before we do that, let's rename these. So let's call these the points. And these are colors. And then it's going to return true if the points.length is equal to the colors.length. And we should probably add a null check. So if the points is not null and the colors is not null and the points length and the colors length are the same. So if you have two non-null equal length lists, then it's valid. And so I'm pulling some things out. We want to pull out our GL begin and our GL set pass. Those can come out. We just need to pass in the vertexes to actually draw the lines, and then everything else ought to work. So now I should be able to go back here and actually add these points and kind of change them in real time, and everything ought to just work. I'm hoping. So we need to first set a base color. I'm going to do just white, but we need to make it not opaque, or not transparent, rather. And let's add just 1 point with one color. And we can actually have this fade out. I'm kind of curious how opacity works. And let's just set this to say 2. And so now we have this white line kind of going off into the distance. That's cool. Let's add a second one. And now those are overlapping. But if I make this say red, and let's make this non-transparent and actually change some things, we now have them going in 2 different directions, and we can modify this a little bit more or do whatever we want. It's all configurable, and it does what we want. So we have these 2 lines, right? Now, the fun part. What was the fun part? I forgot the fun part. There was a fun part to this. So now, the fun part. What we're going to do is we are going to make this work in play mode. So if I start this, if I go to game, there's nothing there. Even like I can run this. No, there's nothing there. That kind of is lame. So what we need to do is actually render this to our scene. And so how we do that is there is an OnPost Render. So this event gets called after you've rendered your scene. And so if we call our render lines with our points and our colors like this, let's do this correctly, colors like that, then this should actually work in our game as well. We should see them pop up, or not. We may not see them pop up, and then I'll feel really silly because this was supposed to be the whole point. Or not. We can just forget about that. It seems it doesn't want to work. I don't know. That's weird. I was sort of expecting that to just kind of work. All right, so I screwed up a bit. That OnPost Render, that doesn't happen on normal game objects. That only gets called by objects attached to the camera. So this flow lines needs to go back over to the main camera here, like that. And then what we need to do is to make this actually get called, because it isn't right now, nothing's happening there, we need to actually modify this a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is grab this and create a transform, and we'll call it the origin. It's just going to be where every other point comes from. And so instead of using the transform position for the current object, for the camera, we're going to use our origin and use that position. And so now all of those lines should be coming from whatever the origin is instead of the camera. It doesn't really like it when they come from the camera, probably because the points are at the camera. But this works, or should work. Hopeful. We'll see what happens. So we have that. If I make the sphere the origin now, this should work. If I go back here, we have our lines being drawn, and they look sort of like this. I was kind of messing around with them to get it to work. Lost it. There we go. And so if I go back to the game, they're not there, right? But if I run this and actually try to get this to work, when it starts, they are there. And so I don't know how to get them to show up without running the game. Maybe there's a setting that I'm missing, but it works. What we could do, we might be able to do. Yeah, so if we turn on gizmos, they show back up prior to playing. But your game mode won't show these lines without you running it. But if you do run it, that OnPost render will get called, and you'll see your stuff. So in game, we should actually be able to interact with these things, which is good, I guess. It means that this actually works. And so perhaps more interesting is if I actually move this, because the other two should track with it. So we can move this around, and the other 2 points will connect to it. So it's kind of connected there. So yeah, that's how you do line rendering the hard way, I guess. I don't know, took a little bit longer than I was anticipating, but it works. So yeah, I'd love to know if you guys are going to use this to make something interesting. So if you are, let me know in the comments below, or if you have ideas for things we could do in the future, let me know about those as well, or consider joining our Discord channel. There's a link in the description to that. Other than that, that's it for this video. So till next time, see you, Internet.